Thank you so much, Sierra. I really appreciate that wonderful introduction. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. We have lots of great information that I'm going to be sharing with you. So I hope you guys are ready to show up big, learn how you can be the CEO of your personal brand. So let's get started. So first, I want to introduce myself. Um, that was a great introduction, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I do what I do. I have been helping brands communicate their value for over 20 years. I feel that it's very important for us to take ownership of our brands and our brand identity. And when it comes to personal branding, it's super important because people want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And your personal brand is a great way for you to define that, for you to let people know how they can interact with you, and for you to have a clear message across all channels that shows you that you are the boss of your brand. So let's move on to the next slide. So we'll start off and we're going to talk about the building blocks of your personal brand. So we'll talk about your brand identity. We'll talk about the brand experience. And before we move forward, we're going to talk about your brand's promise. So your brand identity is really how you want people to see you and identify you. So you get to define that. You don't have to let others define that. You don't have to fall into some of the stereotypical things that people say about you. And being a woman in information technology, we get to show up big, bodacious. We get to tell people, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and this is how you will see me. Your brand experience is so important because it really defines how people feel and when they're interacting with you. I know Maya Angelou once said that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So spend some time really thinking about how you want people to feel at every chance that they get to interact with your personal brand. And I hope that you leave here today with a great big affirmation that I am the boss of my brand, and promise yourself and others around you that you are going to be committed to being your true, authentic self. No matter what that looks like, no matter what that sounds like, you are you, and only you can show up as you. And all of your unique elements, all of your quirks, all of your idiosyncrasies, they make up you. And we're going to make space for those today. So promise me and promise yourself that you are going to be your true authentic self in everything that you do in your personal and your professional life. Let's do the next slide. So when you're thinking about your personal brand and really trying to define that, I always tell people to start with your core values. These are your non negotiables. These are your value statements. These are the things that you stand for and the things that you will not tolerate. So spend some time really defining those, write them out, um, post them on post-it notes and put them by your mirror. Whatever you have to do to remind yourself your values and that this is what you want people to know about you. There are going to be days and there are going to be times when you're busy and everyone's vying for your attention and everything's blowing up at the same time, and you're going to want to revert back to some of those old behaviors where we blend into the background and we let others define us and tell us who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to show up. We're not doing that anymore. So remember why you got started. Remember why those values are important to you. And I want to know, and I want you to think about it when you're talking about motivating yourself and keeping yourself invigorated when, things are hard and the chips are down. What is it that keeps you up at night? What is it that makes you jump out of the bed in the morning and just want to show up and want to do the awesome things that you're doing? And this isn't just about your job. This can be about your engagement with the community. This can be about your family and, most importantly, about yourself. So spend some time with yourself and spend some time really defining what your personal brand is, what you stand for and what you won't stand for, and why these things are important to you. If you remember why they're important to you, it will always help you stay true to them, even when it's tough and even when we're challenged, because we will be challenged. Let's move forward to the next slide. So we've all heard about doing a 360 audit. And, when I work with a new client, one of the first things that I'll always do is an audit of all of their key stakeholders. And as a personal brand, you too have key stakeholders. You have your internal stakeholders. Those are the people in your circle. Those are the people that want to help you be successful. Then you have your external stakeholders. Those are the people out in your community and people that are not directly impacted, but they want to see you be successful. And then you have you right in the center of that. So when I do a brand audit, especially for my personal self, I like to ask others to describe me in 3 words. And it's tough. And I make it tough on purpose. Because if you let people just talk all day, they'll fill the air with a lot of fluff and a lot of egotistical things and things that really don't matter. But when you ask someone to limit it to 3 words, then they have to prioritize. They have to tell you the things that are most important. And that gives you a much better picture of how they see your personal brand. But you can't ask just anybody. You have to figure out who are the people that are going to help you with this exercise. So if you have a mentor, talk to your mentor. Ask your mentor to describe you in 3 words or less. Or an advisor, same thing. Your trusted friends. So not all of your friends, because we all know that some of our friends can be catty. Some of our friends can, have an ulterior motive. Some of our friends are not trying to pour into us and help us be successful. So those aren't the ones we're asking. We're asking our trusted friends and our peers. So if you're in a workplace environment, people in your office that you interact with every day, some of them can help you with this exercise as well. And your supervisor. Now, I put a little caveat here because it can be past or present. So some of you might be entrepreneurs today. So you might not have a direct supervisor, but you can talk to people that have worked with you in the past and ask them to describe you in 3 words or less. And you will be amazed by what they say. So let's move on to the next slide. Anytime we're doing branding exercises, we cannot forget the foundational 4 P's of marketing. So we all see them on the screen, so I'm not going to read them to you. But I do want to talk to you about how they relate to personal branding. So what is your product? If you're talking about personal branding, there is no product. We're talking about you are the product. You and all of the great attributes that you bring to every interaction and every environment that you're in, that's the product. We talk about placement with personal branding and where you show up. It can be your community involvement. So, as Sierra told you, I am very much involved in fighting for against family homelessness. I am very much involved in entrepreneurship and uplifting other entrepreneurs. So I do a lot of volunteer work in these spaces. And serving on the board of directors at Bethany House, I get to show up and tell people about my experience when my family and myself experienced homelessness and how that agency helped lift us up and put us in a position to be successful today. So every chance I get to speak at a fundraiser or advocate at City Hall, those are the places that I show up in my brand. And I show up big. I come just as fabulous as I want to be. And I am not afraid to tell people a little bit about my past and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And price. So I think price is a little easier to understand when you're thinking about your personal brand. It is the value that you bring to every single situation. So it's not just about your paycheck. And it's not just about your wages that you earn, or if you're an entrepreneur, the prices that you charge. Your price is the value. And you have to first recognize that value. You have to think about, what is the impact of the work that I'm doing today? How is that helping someone else? And there's intrinsic value and there's extrinsic value. You add those together and that makes up your brand's price. Your brand packaging. So brands are visual. I'd be lying if I told you they weren't. And your personal brand is visual. So this is your style, your unique elements of you, everything that you see before you. And we have to be honest, human beings prejudge what we see in front of us. And so make sure that you're taking time to lay the foundation on how you want the world to see you. If your brand is bold, cheerful, then show up bright, bold, and cheerful. If your brand is calm and nurturing and affectionate, then show up that way. However you want to be seen. So I did a little poll before we got started, and some people shared with me how they define their personal brand. And there's some of these that are great. One of them that stands out to me is energetic. So your personal brand is energetic. You bring energy to everything that you do. So let's see that. When you walk into the room, take up space, be big, be bodacious. One of them is passionate. So you bring passion to everything that you do. And that's important. So show your passion, show what you're passionate about. Wear it like a banner and be proud about your packaging. Let's move forward to the next slide. Because I have a fun exercise for us. You don't need any workout equipment. You don't even really need a pen and paper for this exercise. So I want you guys to put your branding caps on, and we're going to move forward to the next slide. What does a bottle of your greatest asset look like? So let's think about our packaging. Visualize yourself packaged on a shelf, maybe in a grocery store or retail environment. Maybe your brand is only sold at Neiman Marcus. What does your packaging look like? And what about your packaging makes people want to grab it, take it off the shelf, and take it home with them? One of the people answered that their brand is intense. And I thought about that. I said, oh, that packaging must be amazing. It's got to be intense. It's got to make people want to touch it, feel it, and be good. So your brand packaging is so much. It can be fun. It can be soft. It can be sweet. It can be whatever you say it is. So spend a little time thinking about, what does a package of my best assets even look like? And why do people want that in their daily life? Let's move on to the next slide. It's important that we all realize that no matter where we are in our professional journey, whether we are early in our career, maybe you are an intern and you're still finding your career path, or you're just getting started in the career field, or maybe you are an experienced person that has been working in your career for 20, 30 years. It's never too early for you to find your personal brand. And it's never, ever too late for you to reinvigorate your brand. And a lot of times what happens when we've been in an environment for a long period of time, we start to lose a little bit of why we got started in the first place. We start to get comfortable and reverting back to some old behavior. So if that is you, then make sure that you reinvigorate your brand and bring it back to the forefront. Can we move on to the next slide? Because we're going to talk about how we do that. So I do brand makeovers all the time for business owners. Maybe they got started and they were known for one thing, and as time has evolved, their business has grown and transitioned into something else. Or maybe they've moved into a new market and they brought their old branding and packaging with them. Today, they get to make over their brand and have a fresh start. So when we're talking about personal branding and doing a brand makeover for our personal brands, we always want to start with the why. Always lead with the why. So spend some time asking yourself, not one time, not two times, at least 3 or more times. So if I was to say, why do you want to make over your brand? You're probably going to tell me something very surface level, something very politically correct. That's how we are as humans. But then I'm going to dig a little deeper and I'm going to ask you, why is that important? And then you're going to start to open up and you're going to tell me a little bit deeper, maybe a story or a situation where something happened and you knew that you needed to redefine your brand. You needed to define and let people know how they were going to interact with you. Then I'm going to ask you again, why is that? And by the time we get to the third why or the fourth why, sometimes it takes five whys, we start to understand that hole that we all have in us as human beings. That circle, that's what we're trying to fill and make whole. So start with your why and don't stop with one why, don't stop with two whys, don't stop with three whys. If you need to dig deeper, get to the root cause of your actions. One thing we do with all of our commercial clients when we do a brand makeover is we do a SWOT analysis. So we're going to look at their strengths. And their strengths are going to be the things that they want to carry forward, the things that they want to be known for. They want to lead with those. And we're going to talk about their weaknesses. So these weaknesses present us with a great opportunity to better ourselves, to do some professional development, or to just be mindful of what we want to do differently in our new brand. So we might have known this weakness led to acting with me in a way that I didn't really like. So I'm not going to show up that way. Instead, I'm going to be intentional about showing up in a better way, a way that works better with my why. And it's going to give us these opportunities. So, what are the opportunities sitting on the shelf that you've let sit there, get dusty, and you haven't gone after them? They might be your dreams, they might be your ambitions. Maybe you wanted to open up a business, but because of your other roles as a woman, you may be your mother or wife, and you've let others' dreams kind of water down your dreams and put it on the shelf until later. Let's bring those opportunities back to the forefront and realize how your personal brand can help drive you towards those opportunities. When we take these opportunities and we bring forward all of our strengths, we start to eliminate some of the threats. And I think I talked about a few of those just recently. Our all the calls on our time and our energy, people wanting to define us through their eyes, those all can be seen as threats to our personal brand. So eliminate all of the threats. Let's go for all of the opportunities. We're going to improve in all of the areas of our weaknesses. And some of them we're just going to acknowledge that, hey, that's not what I like to be known for. And I'm just not going to let that define me anymore. And we are going to bring our strengths all the way forward, right to the forefront. And we're going to lead with those. We're going to plaster those all over our social media, all over the world, and let people know this is who I am and this is how I'm going to show up. When we're talking about your brand, you have to think about your audience. And I have audience singular, but in reality, we have lots of audiences. We're not just one flat thing. What you see on the screen, that's not just me today. There's more to me than what this two-dimensional person on the screen. So I have an audience here, which might be in the community work that I do. And that's important to me. And I have an audience which might be my core clients, um, individuals who I'm teaching entrepreneurship training, or people that I'm interacting with in a business environment. And then I have the audience of my family and my personal life. So really define those audiences and how each one is going to bring value to your personal brand. Doesn't mean you need to switch up or code switch for one audience to another audience. Be your authentic self in all of those interactions, but you can bring different elements that are more impactful in that space to the forefront at that time. And at another time, another element of your personal brand might be more impactful in a different space. So always highlight what matters most to you. So, what are the things? Remember, we started with why. What are the things that are not negotiable? What are the things that we are no longer compromising? We are no longer blending into the background, fading to the back, standing behind everyone else while everyone else gets all the praise and accolades. We are showing up. We are bringing it to the forefront. We're showing up big. We're smiling big. And we are going for what we want. Let's move forward to the next slide. It's your thing. I absolutely love this image. This woman here, she is in her own element. She's got this big, wild, crazy hair. I love it. She's wearing a bright color. She is her true self and she is happy. She is at peace. She is not letting anybody stop her shine. She is going to shine bright regardless. So if you're working in a job or working for someone or working in a role, remember the company does not own your personal brand. You have to take ownership of your personal brand. When you leave that job, unlike life insurance and some of the other benefits that come with a corporate job, you take your personal brand with you. All of the things that you have learned, all of the things you've learned about yourself, all of those go with you into every role that you take in the future. So remember, it's your brand. Own it, define it, it's yours. Let's move forward to the next slide. So these are some of the brand assets that we all use to communicate our personal brand. And I want to talk a little bit about each one of them. I know a lot of times, especially when we're working in corporate and we've got to be on the company's about page, we have these drab, boring headshots. And we have on these drab, boring suits, colors, what have you. And we've got a smile, but it's not our full, authentic smile. It's kind of just, okay, the camera's pointed at me. I'm going to smile. And we get to change that today. Go get new headshots. Do some brand photography that's just for you. I mean, if you've got one of these sitting around, some of these do some pretty wicked things. And hire a good branding photographer to go somewhere where you feel energized and you feel your best self and you feel alive. And have some pictures taken there and replace those headshots. It's your thing. It's you. Stop letting others tell you how you're supposed to be and show up in your personal brand. We can talk all day about our bios. Is your bio really telling the story that you want it to tell? Is it telling people why you want to be seen in a certain way or why you want to show up the way that you show up? Or is it just the highlight reel of your resume, a few awards that you've won, a few accolades? If that's not the story that you want to tell, then you get to change your bio. Tell your story because only you can tell your story. So rewrite that bio. Rewrite it 4 times. Have someone who knows you well read it and rewrite it again. Tell your story. It's your story. Own it. So make sure it's telling people why you're passionate about the things that you're passionate about. Make sure it's giving people all of the information that they need to see you as a whole complete brand. So sometimes we have limited space where we can express these things. And sometimes, depending on our roles, we don't bring forth all the information that we want to, maybe at our job and in our work bio. And I think journalists do the best job of having their own personal identity outside of the role that they have at the news outlet. So they'll have a personal website and it may have links to some of the stories that they're most passionate about, but then it's also a chance to talk about things that are important to them in a meaningful way. A lot of people today are doing a blog. You can have a lifestyle blog. You can talk about your role, whether it's what you're doing for work, whether it's what you're doing in your personal life, or even your family life. There are food bloggers, there are travel bloggers. So, whatever you love to do, talk about it in your blog. Create a blog that's just yours. You own it. Nobody gets to tell you what's in there. And, I know we're in IT and we've got some pretty wicked technology skills, but for this, you don't have to have this rich, robust blog and things flying across the screen and all these applications and applets making things happen. It's just a place for you to share your thoughts and what's important to you and your experiences in your own words and communicate that out to people. So there are going to be people that is going to resonate with. So when we show up in our true, big, authentic self, others see us and that gives them permission to do the same. And I'm going to take a drink before we talk about social media. What does social media tell about your story? Is it really representing the person that you are? Or is it just what, you think others want to see or, highlight reel? For the last year and a half, a lot of us haven't been face to face with our coworkers, with our school friends, with people that, have helped us get to where we are. So the only thing that they're seeing about what we're doing today is what we post on social media. So if your social media is not truly representing the person that you are today and how you want to be seen today, guess what? They all have a delete button. They all have an edit button. And you can make a declaration today that you're going to stop trying to show just the best parts of your life on social media, just the pretty pictures and the times that we're completely glamorous. Show the vulnerable moments. Talk about the experiences that really have an impact on your day, on your week, on your life, things that are changing you right now and in the present. Social media is a great place for you to exercise some of your personal branding and put it out there and tell people who you are today. Because maybe they knew you 10, 20, 30 years ago, and you're not that person anymore. That person doesn't live here anymore. This is who I am today, and this is how you're going to interact with me today. So, you know, do a quick social media audit. Scroll through your timeline and say, hey, this isn't necessarily the way I want the world to see me anymore. Delete. Or, you're looking at it and everything's picture perfect and you're like, yeah, that's not what this is what you see on the screen, but there's a whole lot more going on behind the screen. Share some of those vulnerable moments. You'd be surprised who that impacts and who that helps. So I am not one that thinks that, we all have to be social media influencers and everything has to be perfect in order to really get a message across. So use social media as a platform to have real meaningful conversations. Because remember, people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. So it's a great place for you to build relationships, reinvigorate relationships, and some of the relationships we don't want to carry forward into our new existence. So some of those relationships, they also need to get the delete button. Can we move to the next slide? I was looking for the button, like, wait a minute, what's happening here? So I want to give you guys some personal branding tips. And I said some of these things and I brought them forward because they're important. I want you to be your authentic self. We can tell when a person is putting on airs on social media or they're only showing us the filtered version of their life. Be your authentic self, whether in real life, on social media, in your career. Bring the real you to the table and watch how many people love it, embrace it. I can remember the very first time that I spoke on behalf of Bethany House. It was 2016, and I had wrote a review for them on Facebook. And someone reached out to me and said, hey, we're having this fundraiser. It was Ales to Ziffendales, and they wanted me to speak and share my story. I was shaking I think I had on flats, but my knees were shaking. My palms were sweaty. I was so nervous about getting up in front of these wealthy philanthropists and telling them that I was once homeless and my children was Bethany House seeking shelter. I did it. I was scared. I overcame that fear because we know what fear stands for: false evidence appearing real. And I got up there and I told everybody my story. And when I came down off that stage, these individuals, I mean, billionaires, came up to me and they gave me a hug. And we had some private, personal, intimate moments right there in front of everybody. And it was so relieving to know that I could be accepted, you know, the not so pretty parts of my life, along with some of the aides. I did tell them at that point I had just recently graduated from Xavier University. So I did tell them about that. But these people were so happy to be a part of my story and to be able to experience it and hear it firsthand. So be your true, authentic self. There are people out there waiting to hear your story, and only you can tell your story. People can read your story, they can read your bio. If any of you guys have Googled me, I'm sure you've probably read a little bit about me. There was a really good article written about me in Women of Cincy, and I read that story like I was reading a novel. Like, oh my God, then what happened? But only because I was able to tell my story. It came in my voice, in my words. Nobody else can tell your story the way that you can tell it. When I teach, and I do teach an entrepreneurship mindset training class, and I teach high schoolers and recent graduates how to think like a boss. I also teach adults who are typically low to moderate income. And when we talk about branding and from a mindset perspective, we don't talk about brand colors. We don't talk about fonts. We don't talk about logos. We talk about a brand's reputation. And it is my opinion that your brand reputation is the most important element of your brand. You can change your logo, you can change your font color, you can do a brand makeover, but if you've established a reputation, it's a lot harder to eliminate that. So be impeccable with your word. Do what you say you're going to do. Stand for what you say you stand for. Do it when you say you're going to do it, and don't compromise your integrity for anyone, anything at any time. Because again, your personal brand, you take it with you, the good and the bad. So make sure that you are a person of your word, you are a person of integrity, that you are a person that stands for something, and stand for that and own that 100% of the time. I am huge on personal development. I am always trying to improve myself. And I want you to realize that you should never stop improving. You should never stop learning. If you want to know something, take a class. You can take an online class. You don't, in today's world, you don't even have to get up out of your house and leave. You don't even have to put on pants. You can take a class. Or if you want to do something, there's something you've always wanted to do, maybe take a cooking class or maybe do some type of nature experience. Do something that you've always wanted to do. It's always looked interesting. Never stop improving on yourself. Never ever stop going after the things that are important to you. And what you'll find, you'll get into those classes and into those spaces, and you'll meet other like minded people that are thinking about the same things and find the same things important. So then you start to build your tribe. And these are people that are going to be with you, and they're going to celebrate you, and they're going to hold you up when you don't feel so strong. So then you start to meet the people that are going to pour into you because they too are developing themselves. They There are always opportunities to enhance yourself, to make yourself better, learn a new language, whatever it is that you've always wanted to do, go for it. Today is a day that we are going to promise to be our true authentic selves. And that includes improving and going for what we want. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So, we are engulfed in so many different cultures. If you're working in corporate, you're involved in your company's culture. If you're in a religious organization, you're engulfed in their culture. But don't get so consumed by the external cultures. Always bring forth the internal cultures and the internal core values to everything that you do. So, you know, sometimes it's going to be tough. Sometimes we're going to feel like a unicorn. Kind of why I like this picture. I love her hair. It's bold. It's amazing. I love her sense of style. But sometimes we're going to feel like a unicorn, and we're going to feel like we're the only one that's thinking this way. Guess what? You're wrong. There's probably someone else in that room that wishes that things were different, but they're afraid to take that stance or stand up for what they believe in. So you can show your leadership in the fact that you are going to stand up for what you believe in. You are going to be who you say you are 100% of the time. And you're not going to let an external culture or the cultural influences change who you are at the core. Do not be afraid to take up space. Do not be afraid to walk into a room and all eyes are on you. This is, we are done fading into the background. We are done playing small so other people can feel big. All of those things, we're done with those. Do not be afraid to be big, take up space, stand tall, and let others know that we have something to say, something of value, and we want you to hear us loud and clear. And I want you to always, always, always do what's right for you. So we talk about integrity. We talk about being impeccable with your word. So when you just made that promise to yourself, you have to be impeccable with the promises that you make to yourself as well. So look yourself in the mirror. There's going to be days where, we're going to take it on the chin. We're going to want to fall down. We're going to have our moment. Take your moment. It's okay. But then get back up, fix your crown, and get back to business. So those are my personal branding tips. I would definitely invite you all to go and check out my influencer branding blog. There are tons of branding tips. I've spoken with some phenomenal leaders of different organizations about how they're branding their organization. I've talked to influencers about how they're showing up. So there's lots of information on that blog that you can take forward with you. I want to open it up and see if anybody has any questions. We've got a few minutes here left, and I want to spend this time answering your questions. I do brand coaching with a lot of business leaders and organizational leaders. So today is your chance to ask me anything. Hey, Sierra.
Hey, first off, thank you. That was an incredible presentation, really enjoyable, and it was so, I guess, just personal, vulnerable, sharing your background. I just want to thank you for being so open with us today and sharing all that and sharing your expertise as a brand expert, first off. I wanted to start with a question around some of the things that you said. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on women specifically um, to behave and be a certain way at the workplace. What kind of advice would you give on how to balance being your authentic self and that kind of corporate expectation that many of us face at our day-to-day jobs?
So, I will always tell people, there are some rules that, are for a reason. So I'm not telling people to, be profane or do things that are wrong. But if you have a value and you stand for something, you have an obligation to yourself and to everyone else in that room to share your conviction and why. And a lot of times we have these convictions and we're afraid that people aren't going to accept that. And really, if you start with why and you tell people why you feel the way that you do and have some real meaningful conversations, and the conversation is a two-way street. It's expressing your values and what you believe, and then it's also listening and understanding other perspectives. But you cannot be there are certain things you just can't compromise. We do when they some people think, the women should play a subordinate role or that we should be passive and we should let things slide. And if someone says something that offends us, we should just, don't make a big fuss. No, you need to stand up and say, what you said or what you did is incorrect. And because we're in IT, we have all of this data, we have all this information bullet pointed, like, okay, this is incorrect because of this and this and this, and I expect better or expect different from someone in your role. And it's time to challenge those myths, because that's what they are. They're myths. We don't have to conform to that.
Yeah, I love that. I want to jump over to a question that was submitted from Kathy. and it's similar to something that I had written down while I was listening to you. Why do you think that it's so hard for women to promote themselves, be their own voice, and their own cheerleader?
I think a lot of it is cultural. We have always, for centuries, we have been told that we're not supposed to do that. You know, different laws and different rules. So we have to, it feels awkward at first. But once you've done it once or twice or three times, you start to get more comfortable with it. And that's why I said, you have different audiences and you have different rooms. Try it in a room where you feel a little safer a couple of times, and then try it in another room, and then try it on the big stage. So the more that you do it, like anything else, the more that we practice that, our muscles get stronger, our guts get stronger, and we get a little bit more gumption, and we get a lot better at it as we practice it. But it takes practice.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that answered the question that I wrote down, which is showing up can be really intimidating and really difficult, especially the first time. And like, how do I get over that hump to do it at the office and tell people that this is what I stand for and this is what I want to be doing, these sorts of things. But practice makes
And
perfect. Definitely.
if you don't have a practice space, use your phone, record yourself, and then watch yourself. And you will see like, oh, that's right. And you'll get even more excited and passionate about your convictions.
Yeah, I often find that I write down the hard things that I want to say, especially in a virtual world, and I'll just have it on a notepad right in front of me and read it directly to a person because I do struggle with some conviction. And if it's already pre-written, it's a little bit easier for me.
Because it's in black and white. You can see it.
Jessica also submitted a question for you. When handling separate personal brands, for example, a professional brand versus a more creative brand, how can you ensure both come across as authentic, even though they focus on separate aspects of your life?
So there are going to be some overlaps. As you have your education for professional brand, your creative is going to come with you. So that's where that SWOT analysis really comes in great. Looking at your strengths, and some of your strengths are going to work better in one environment, and some of them are going to work better in a different environment. And they're still all part of you. So, like I said, we're not two-dimensional. We are three-dimensional. We have multiple gifts, multiple talents, multiple things that we're passionate and excited about. So you can bring that same energy to each of those, and be yourself in all of those, and you'll start to see some overlap. You might be very creative, but then you'll see yourself, doing things in a very professional way, creatively, which can be an asset, and vice versa. You may be very professional, and then you'll see yourself being innovative and creative in that professional space. So I love to see all of the worlds and all of the versions of Nahamani come together and have fun with it.
I love that. To be respectful of everyone's time and give everyone a quick break before our next session, I want to wrap up with one final question. And I would love to know what your personal packaging would look like if you were doing your own exercise.
That's a great question. So, as you can see, there's lots of fauna in my life, and that is intentional. So, I expect it to be very tropical. I expect it to have lots of big flowers and big leaves and colors, limes and greens, and then this big poppy seed red. So big contrasting colors, and it's just going to make people want to touch it and smell it, and it's going to feel great and all of those things. So that's what brand Nahamani is going to look like on the shelf.
So good.
It's going to be colorful.